I remember one student, as a counselor, we taught applied psychology courses, and I had a student who found out that he was a recovering alcoholic, very young man. He was in his early 20s. And we helped him develop a program for transfer to Cal State Fullerton as a business major. And he was getting straight A's. I mean, he was just one of the most memorable students I've ever had. He, through his association with John Crean, who was also an alcoholic, he used to park cars for Crean's TV show, the cooking show he used to do. And so Crean asked him what he was going to do, and he said he was going to transfer to Cal State Fullerton. And he said, "Why don't you go to Chapman?" Well, Crean was on the board of Chapman. So it was just, for me, really quick, write a letter, recommendation, and so he got a full scholarship to Chapman, and I lost contact with him, but the last I heard, he had a pretty good job with Sony Corporation and just has done very well. So, I've success stories, and then there's a lot of stories about another example I think I remember because it goes on. I had a student who was a cocktail waitress who helped her get through all of the rigmarole of transferring to UC and getting financial aid. So before she was ready to transfer, she became pregnant and never went. And so her husband was a Vietnam War vet, and she referred him to me to work out his academic plan so that he could get his VA benefits. And 19 years later, the daughter came to see me, another referral. So
I really don't have one favorite student, have many. I mean, there's so many positive experiences. I mean, I'm teaching the grandchildren of some of the, or children, and I guess grandchildren of some of the students that I had, the ones that were married real young. But I mean, I still get calls from students who are doing doctoral work or postgraduate work, who are former students, who are now in the community college system that are employed. And I often run into them in different situations. My wife and I went to Ensenada probably about a month ago, and we're sitting at the bar, and I was having my tequila, and Rita was having her little trago, and I looked to the right, and it was one of the students, Benavides, and she looked at me, and she goes, "Pete Espinosa," and we started talking, and she has her PhD. She's working for Santa Ana College. I mean, and so we talked. I mean, so I really can't. There's many special stories. There's many special stories and many positive experiences that I and the program and my work with some people here have really made a difference with students who have gone on to do some fascinating things. I got an email from someone when Mike passed away. I got an email from someone who's a journalist in Singapore, doing major. He's the one who was observing the disaster in Japan, and he was a journalist. And he's there, and he says, "I heard about the death of Mike." He said, "I remember the class that you and Mike taught. It's called Peace Studies." He said it changed his life. And he said, a very nice email. And he said, "I'm coming home in Christmas, and so we'll get together and talk about, old days." And that was what, early 1980s? And so it's really that part more than anything. My relationship with students and the contact I have, those who moved on, probably outweigh anything else that is accomplished here. I mean, I have some very good friendships here. I have some very good, established some friendships with some classified and certificated faculty here. They're long-lasting friendships. And that's good, and then, you treasure those. But I think that when you're in the field of education, I mean, you do this for the love of serving students and teaching, but the ultimate goal is to have students come back and say, you made a difference. So and I think that's why I'm still teaching. I mean, why do I want to give that up? I don't want to give that up. I mean, it's work, but it's good work. It's okay. What can individuals do to make a difference? And so that's tough to teach the jump. How do you teach from universal challenges to personal? And I think What we usually did, we had the students involve themselves in something where they advocated something, and they had to do something, and usually we tagged along. One of the things we did is one weekend I said, well, let's go camping and learn about nature and Native Americans, and it just happened to be at the test site by Arizona. So the rationale was nature, Native America, the Shoshone, and it just, well, here we are. And, oh, this is where they test nuclear weapons. So what we did is we had students interview the Shoshone group who was teaching about their native land that was stolen by the government and used for testing. And then there was protest, which was universal protest. And as a matter of fact, we must have gone there at least 5 or 6 times. And one of the times I even got arrested myself. I just said, you know, it's another story. But I mean, so it was I don't know, it was contemporary, it was challenging, it was beyond academic, it was application. And as a result of the nature of the class, we knew each other very well. We knew each other very well. The hard part is it was really a burnout class. And the reason why is because we spend more time with students. And I'll tell you, we were exhausted.
I have many, many great memories from the Fatigati family, who were a son and 2 daughters that took a lot of my courses, to Jim Bullingmall actually was a student of mine. He was my high school math teacher and geometry, and he was hired before I. And anyway, he took a couple of my courses, and he came up to me one time and he says, "Now you're the teacher and I'm the student," and that was kind of special. So I had, you know, fond memories of Greg Bird. And Greg Bird was a football player, and I really liked Greg. He was a very, very nice person. He was 6'5" and about 330 pounds. And I remember one time he impressed me because he was such a gentle, kind guy. But we were in the Chiricahuas in eastern Arizona, and we had to pack all our equipment in. So normally, you know, the students would team up, and 2 or 3 students would bring the ice chests in because they were big, and the stoves and everything. So I told Greg, I said, well, we need a little help. And he says, okay. So he stacks these ice chests on and stoves and picks them all up and brings them over. And I was just going, oh my goodness. But he was a lineman for the football team, and he went on to become a pro. So, but again, in that talk about story, I don't want to take too much time with these, but on that same trip, there was peccary, which is a wild pig type of animal in the Chiricahuas. So we go out at night to find them, a little bit like a snipe hunt. But you can hear them because they're rooting for plants. They're digging them up, and they make sounds. So we were on this trail, and it was an open grassland area, and the moon was out, so it was a perfect time. And what happened was we split the group, and I went with one group, and this other group went out because we're trying to flush them. And we came back on the trail. We backtracked it, and this small group with Greg and Michelle, there's another group, they hid behind the trees, and they started making these pig sounds. And at first I thought it was for real. They did a really good job. And then all of a sudden they jumped out, and I thought that was such a classic moment. I go, you guys, you got me. I said, you really got me. And we started getting more projectors, and then technology. Right around the 90s, right in that time, there was a small but consistent change. And I went to a DNA workshop in San Marcos and San Diego, and I got to use the internet, and I was doing research with a library in Australia, and I realized, as we all did, this is going to change everything. And it wasn't but about 2 or 3 years later that it really started going in that direction. And I remember asking my class, when I got back from this workshop, I said, how many of you have an internet, a website or anything? And maybe 2 people. And I kept doing this year after year. About the third year, I would say a good half of the class had their hands up, and another, from the time I asked them to the last time was about 5 years, almost everybody raised their hand. So that's how quickly emails and all that start changing, websites were becoming common. And then, of course, the phones and all the different programs, as well as what started happening more was the availability of information, research, and then the district encouraged us to offer online courses. So that was another challenge. So we had to, we started getting into PowerPoint, and then you started offering the courses online and setting that all up, and then offering courses through Blackboard and things of that nature. So when I left, I had always been right in the heart of all that because I liked the technology side of teaching. I was working with a lot of courses on the internet and resources, having students do projects, doing small tests so that they could do progressive learning. So if they didn't do well on one test, they could go online and maybe do 5 questions, and I get some credit for that. So I enjoyed that part too. And I'm still, now that I'm retired, I'm still learning things on the internet and enjoying that part.
I have a couple of good memories. I spent 18 years here. It was like my family here. And I love the people. I have one particular favorite memory. It was when I first started out, we had a tradition in May, right before finals. And it was started by Constance Carroll to develop, I think, camaraderie among the faculty and administrators and collegiality. It was called the Faculty Olympics, where the faculty competed with each other in sporting events. And I don't know about you, but my whole life I was a bookworm. And one year in particular, I won the free throw contest. I hit more free throws than any of the other women faculty. And for that, they gave me a trophy, with one of these figures going like that. And I still have that little trophy on my bookshelf. That was so much fun. We had some good times there. I enjoyed, in the early 90s, we were just getting off the ground on the information competency requirement, and I was able to work with the state chancellor's office. The state chancellor at the time was Tom Nussbaum and Carolyn Norman, and we worked to get an information competency requirement statewide in the community colleges. That was a really fascinating experience. There are so many students that come into the library and whose paths cross, but there's one gal in particular that I have a fond memory of. She was a Korean gal, and we sort of developed a bond because my mother's Korean, and she was very driven, and she wanted to get all A's because she was going to go to UCLA and she wanted to get scholarships. Well, she was taking English 1A with, I believe, Professor Lee Walker, and she was pulling a B. So she made an appointment with me at what we called back then term paper workshops or research paper workshops, where the students would sign up for half an hour one-on-one time with the librarian. So I helped her develop a research strategy for her project, and she was able to pull her grade up to an A. And for months after that, this gal would bring me homemade Korean food and kimchi every other week, and I would put it in the the refrigerator in the lounge, and you could smell it. It was just fantastic. She was such a good cook. Well, she did go on to UCLA. She got her doctorate, and she was also voted Teaching Assistant of the Year, and in fact, she was then later hired to be a faculty member here at Saddleback College.